I saw something online that said Delulu is the Salulu. And I screenshotted it.
That is Trulu.
Yeah.
The Salulu.
Mm-hmm. For shoo-shoo.
Books. 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 Books.
Hello and welcome to Didn't Read It, the podcast that definitely believes that the pores are fully three-dimensional people.
Mm-hmm. I don't know about that.
I am your host, Grace Todd, and with me this week is beloved pod bestie and regular,
Oh.
Lee.
Ooh.
Hi, baby.
Hi.
How you doing? That's a dumb question.
Yeah. I'm as good as is to be expected.
Listeners who are not in the Richmond area will not know that on the day that we are recording this, we are in the midst of an as yet to be determined lengthwise second water crisis.
Round 2. Give it up for round 2, everybody.
Woo!
Yeah, at it again.
And I think we actually managed to mention the first water crisis in one of our episodes recorded in January. So this is the second time
Numero dos.
that the city has told us we cannot drink our own tap water because of failing infrastructure.
Yeah, you got to boil that bitch.
That was supposed to be repaired with federal grants that the Trump administration canceled.
Yeah, we got old water.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The oldest.
Old poo water.
It's historic, both in age and disease content.
Yes. We got diseases you thought were long gone.
Yeah, I mean, if you love classic literature, have you tried cholera?
A bout of dysentery, perhaps?
Ooh, Oregon
Yes.
Trail, yes.
Ooh, what do you put on your gravestone?
TB, we could try some TB on for size.
Yeah, why not?
I don't know if you can get TB from water. I think that's mostly airborne, but you know.
God damn it, we can try.
We can. The city of Richmond is going to find out.
If it can be done, Richmond's gonna do it. That's the spirit.
Look, Poe's mother died here.
Yeah.
And
we killed her. We'll do it again.
And we're just trying to make more
Ghosts.
literary greats.
Yeah.
Who turn into ghosts eventually by poisoning other people's mothers.
Yeah.
To see if that turns them into haunted Gothic poets.
Yes. The suffering.
Yeah.
For the art.
You sound like Sam Eagle.
That's what I was going for. It is the American way.
The suffering.
The suffering. Yes, thank you. I'm so glad you picked up on that.
Yes. Well, Lee, speaking of suffering.
Yes. Oh.
And art.
Great segue.
In the spirit of the time of year, I've brought you a short story about a garden party.
Ooh.
In which nothing bad is going to happen.
I don't believe you. Wait a minute.
Have you ever heard of the author Katherine Mansfield?
The name sounds familiar, but I'm not sure. Probably not.
So she was a New Zealand author.
Kiwi.
Yes.
Sorry.
This is what you lived in Hawaii for all of 10 minutes and now you feel like you can make fun of all of the island peoples with impunity.
I'm not making fun. I love their little, I love the way they speak. Whenever I try to do an Australian accent, it always ends up a New Zealand accent because I think it's easier. Sorry.
Now that we've alienated anyone from New Zealand who might have been listening.
You live in a beautiful place and you're very nice peoples.
Katherine Mansfield. She was from New Zealand originally. And this is the 19-teens about.
Okay.
So she starts writing before World War I. She goes to school in London.
Okay.
Goes back home for a little while. Hates it.
Oh.
She 110% does the
The study abroad kid thing.
Not the study abroad kid, more specifically the suburban white girl who went to college in a big city and comes back to the suburbs and just loathes everything, including her own parents.
She's like, it's so boring here. There's no culture.
Literally.
Yeah.
There are letters where she's just like, I cannot believe I ever lived here. These people are intolerable.
This is so embarrassing.
She's writing about like her own parents being like,
Yeah.
I can't be around them for longer than 15 minutes. This is horrific.
And they're just like, we're so glad to have you back, honey.
I will admit I did not get deep enough to know if her parents actually sucked.
Well,
It is 19 teens colonial New Zealand. So like probably.
yeah, possibly.
She definitely did not. She came back to New Zealand in part being like, oh, this is a colony.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Did not stay very long. Managed to fly the coop back to London. She was, you know, sort of in the periphery of like Virginia Woolf and all of that. Although she didn't have quite as much money as the rest of the Bloomsbury set, which left her also a little alienated from them.
Gross.
And then tragically contracted tuberculosis.
Ah, made a visit to Richmond, I see.
Yes, she briefly detoured through Richmond, contracted TB, and ultimately, very tragically, died at 34.
Oh, that is young.
Yeah, so she had a short but productive career
Okie dokie.
and a sadly short life.
Yeah.
And this story, titled "The Garden Party," was written toward the end of her life.
Okay.
She knew that she was in very poor health.
Oh.
And so a lot of her writing towards the end of her life was kind of preoccupied with living and beauty and reconciling. She was a modernist, right?
That's the opposite of the way I thought you were going to go.
No, so she had big thoughts about like death being an kind of inevitable complication of life, but that
True.
tension kind of being what makes life beautiful and worth living. And
True.
she was a big fan of Oscar Wilde when she was growing up. She had big thoughts about like emotional intensity kind of being what makes life worth living, and some of what she found so stifling about going back to the upper class sort of colonial, I want to call them suburbs, but suburbs didn't exist yet, but the sort of the upper class colonial kind of society of New Zealand was how, and this is the reason that I keep wanting to refer to them as the suburbs, is you can tell that she found it very sterile.
Yeah.
Very lacking in culture, lacking in conflict, even lacking in depth.
Yeah.
All of which she at least felt like she was seeing in places like London and then later Switzerland. She was also very frustrated by Switzerland by the end of her life. She was like, it's so sterile.
All these places are too sterile.
And I think she's a very talented writer. I do think that one of the sort of tragedies is it is a goddamn shame she died so young. She also, I think, lived the sort of tension of being an upper class white girl who was very frustrated with the trappings of being an upper class white girl.
Yeah.
But was nonetheless, to an extent, blinded by her own privilege.
Sure.
Not that you can't level those same
White girls
accusations.
blinded by your own privilege. Check in. What's up?
You know, not that you can't say the same thing about any of the rest of the Bloomsbury set.
Sure.
She was canonically... I always want to use the phrase canonically bisexual because I like it.
What? Use it.
Well, it's weird. You can't really call someone's actual life the canon.
It
feels a little fan fiction.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's nice of you.
She was documentably.
Okay.
Documentarily. She was.
She
She had 2 verifiable affairs with women, probably more, but those are the 2 that we know about.
Noise.
Several affairs with men. She got pregnant out of wedlock.
Oops.
Ultimately miscarried, but not before she married another guy.
Ooh.
But literally left him the day after. She was married to him for like
Nice.
less than 12 hours.
Nice.
And then bolted
Love that.
and wound up getting the marriage annulled.
Yeah.
She used those 34 years.
Sounds like it.
She had some good times.
Yeah.
Didn't
Good for
waste
her.
a moment.
Good for her, I say.
And I believe she is considered kind of one of like the, canonical New Zealand writers, but that's complicated because she wasn't very nice to or about New Zealand.
Yeah. What else has she written? Did she write any novels?
I know she mostly wrote short fiction.
Okay.
I think she might have written like a novel,
Yeah.
but most of what she produced was short stories. She released, I think, 2 or 3 collections of short stories during her lifetime, and then there was another one that was put together posthumously.
Okay.
And she is considered like one of like the modernists. Like she helped shape the modernist short story as we know it.
Okay.
And this story, The Garden Party, is kind of considered one of the examples of that. It's very, the narration is very kind of
modern.
Yeah.
Ooh.
And all of that being said,
Let's go.
would you like to join me at a garden party where nothing bad happens?
I would, but I sure. I know you're lying to me, but yeah, let's go.
'Tis the season. Let's have a garden party together.
Okay.
And after all, the weather was ideal. They could not have had a more perfect day for a garden party if they had ordered it. Windless, warm, the sky without a cloud. Only the blue was veiled with a haze of light gold, as it is sometimes in early summer. The gardener had been up since dawn, mowing the lawns and sweeping them, until the grass and the dark flat rosettes where the daisy plants had been seemed to shine. As for the roses, you could not help feeling they understood that roses are the only flowers that impress people at garden parties. The only flowers that everybody is certain of knowing. Hundreds, yes, literally hundreds, had come out in a single night. The green bushes bowed down as though they had been visited by archangels.
Roses.
Woses, many woses. So we are setting up for a garden party.
Yes.
This is the home of the Sheridans.
Okay.
Mr. and Mrs. Sheridan and a bevy of children. And we're having breakfast. We're gearing up for the garden party.
Other people are getting the garden party ready for us.
Exactly.
Yes.
And the workmen have showed up to put up the marquee tent.
Oh, a tent.
And when they ask their mother where the marquee tent should go, she says, "It's no use asking me. I'm determined to leave everything to you children this year. Forget I am your mother. Treat me as an honored guest."
How old are these kids?
They all appear to be teens
Okay.
at a minimum.
They can decide where a tent goes.
Indeed, teens into young adults.
Yeah. Teens
However,
love tents.
Meg can't possibly go and supervise the men because she's just washed her hair before breakfast. And Joe's, one of the other sisters, always comes to breakfast in a silk petticoat and kimono jacket.
Mm-hmm.
So she can't possibly go outside,
Yeah.
which leaves it to Laura, who they're saying is the artistic one.
Sure. Yeah.
And so Laura jets off to the lawns,
Go talk to those men.
still holding her piece of bread and butter. And it says, "It's so delicious to have an excuse for eating out of doors. And besides, she loved having to arrange things. She always felt she could do it so much better than anybody else."
Laura.
Laura. So there's all of these men in shirt sleeves
Ooh.
carrying, big heavy tools and canvas and bits of tent. And
stop.
Laura notes that now she wishes she hadn't brought the bread and butter because there's nowhere to put it and she can't possibly throw it away because she'll see them or they'll see her.
Just eat it.
Well, she's being weird about it
All right.
because she's a teenage girl.
Yeah. Fair.
And it says that she says good morning to them. And at first she tries copying her sort of mother's affect and is immediately horrifically embarrassed.
Yeah. Relatable.
And winds up kind of stammering like, so you're here for the tent?
I don't know what that was. Sorry.
And one of the men, is like, yes, that is why we are here.
Clearly.
And it says, his smile was so easy, so friendly, that Laura recovered. And now she looked at the others. They were smiling too. "Cheer up. We won't bite," their smile seemed to say. How very nice workmen were. And what a beautiful morning. And so they have a bit of a conversation about where to put the tent.
Is she really innocent or am I just horny? Am I going in the wrong direction here? Should I turn around?
With the workmen?
I don't know.
Let's just wait and see.
Okay.
Maybe play the field, like sort of...
That's what I'm trying to do.
So she suggests that they put the tent on the lily lawn.
Okay.
And one of the men frowns and says, no. You it's not conspicuous enough. He says, you see, with a thing like a marquee, and he turns to Laura in his easy way, you want to put it somewhere it'll give you a bang slap in the eye if you follow me.
I do not.
Which is followed by, Laura's upbringing made her wonder for a moment whether it was quite respectful of a workman to talk to her of bangs slap in the eye.
She's like, oh, well, I never.
But she did follow him. And so they go on with a bit of a debate, the tennis court, and one of them she has to mention that there's going to be a band, and then she feels very embarrassed all of a sudden that they're going to have a band, but it's a very small band.
Yeah. Not like those nerds have with their big bands.
Something like that.
Yeah, sure.
But the workmen finally insist that it needs to be on one particular lawn up against the karaka trees, which I hope I am pronouncing correctly. I apologize, New Zealand. And she feels a little funny about hiding the karaka trees with the marquee. It says, they were so lovely, with their broad gleaming leaves and their clusters of yellow fruit. They were like trees you imagined growing on a desert island, proud, solitary, lifting their leaves and fruits to the sun in a kind of silent splendor. Must they be hidden by the marquee? They must. And so the men trudge off to put up the marquee.
I suppose they would know.
And as they start heading, one of the workmen stops and sticks his hand in a lavender bush and then stops to, the thing that you do sometimes where you rub your fingers on the lavender and then smell your fingers to be like, oh, lavender, how nice.
I do it all the time in your yard.
Yes.
With a lot of different plants.
And it says, when Laura saw that gesture, she forgot all about the karakas in her wonder at him caring for things like that, caring for the smell of lavender. How many men that she knew would have done such a thing? Oh, how extraordinarily nice workmen were, she thought. Why couldn't she have workmen for her friends rather than the silly boys she danced with and who came to Sunday night supper? She would get on much better with men like these.
Mm-hmm. You just turned the page and started laughing.
It's just to prove how happy she was, just to show the workmen how at home she felt and how she despised stupid conventions. Laura took a big bite of her bread and butter. She felt just like a work girl.
Good for you, Laura.
So Laura is carried away in the romance of the moment.
Yeah.
She's one with the workmen now.
Yeah.
She's decided that they are her best friends.
Sure.
She's definitely not infantilizing anybody.
No.
No, not at all.
She has seen them in their wholeness as real people.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And she's proven it by taking a big bite of bread and butter in front of them, just to show that she doesn't care about convention.
That is class solidarity right there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sometimes I go downtown, and I find like a garbage man or a city employee, a bus driver.
Mm-hmm.
That's my favorite. Every time I get on the city bus, I just take a big bite out of a slice of
toast,
buttered bread.
Yeah. Am I right?
Toast is an affectation of the bourgeoisie.
Oh.
It's bread and butter.
Just bread and butter.
Just cold bread.
Yeah.
Room temperature butter.
And you go, we're in this together.
Yeah.
And they go, please sit down.
And then everybody claps.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Congratulations on your achievement.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, there's a telephone call for Laura.
Okay.
So she has to leave off being best friends with the workmen.
Later, besties.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Love you guys.
Back later. She has a quick chat with her friend Kitty. And Mrs. Sheridan pipes in to tell Laura to tell Kitty to wear that sweet hat that she had on last Sunday.
Oh.
Because we're all discussing the importance of the outfits for the garden party.
Yes. See and be seen.
Yes, indeed. And then the flowers arrive.
Ooh.
And Laura is...
You bring in flowers
Yes.
for your garden?
Yes. Truckloads of them.
Oh.
Mrs. Sheridan has ordered what sounds like hundreds of lilies for the garden party.
Wait a minute. Didn't they have a lily yard that they were going to put the tent in?
Yeah, those are alive. Those are still in the yard.
But
You need to put these ones on the tables and stuff.
all right.
Yep.
What do I know?
You need hundreds of lilies.
I never lived in New Zealand in
It's-
1910.
So many lilies that Laura is taken aback and she almost sends it away. She's like, there's no way anybody ordered this many lilies. And her mother floats in.
You're like, I did.
Yes, exactly. She goes, what did she say? I was passing the shop yesterday and I saw them in the window. And I suddenly thought, for once in my life, I shall have enough canna lilies.
Enough.
Enough.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Which again sounds like hundreds.
Yeah.
It's a truly baffling number of flowers.
You know what? It's a garden party.
Mm-hmm. It's a garden party.
Need I say more?
Exactly. And her mother drifts away again. The children are all kind of vying for attention.
From who?
Everyone.
Okay.
Staff.
Are there more children than
their
those
own
3
mother.
girls?
There's a brother. He'll pop
Okay.
up soon.
Okay.
But the portrait being painted, in the interest of time, is of a rather crowded, it's not quite eccentric because that would make them too interesting, you know, but just sort of an affluent family full of very silly people.
Yes. Okay.
What's the thing the kids say? Unserious.
Unserious people.
They're very unserious
Okay.
people.
Very shallow.
Yes.
Okay.
There's a whole drama because, and I will admit, having not hosted garden parties in the 19 teens, I don't 1,000% understand this detail, but there's something about the flags for the sandwiches, which Mrs. Sheridan was supposed to have gotten ahead of time, and the cook is asking for them, and no one knows where they are, and Mrs. Sheridan didn't get them.
Like a little toothpick that goes in a sandwich?
I guess it's
A little flag on it?
to label them, I suppose, because
Oh.
there are 15. The cook is very proud of the fact that there are 15 kinds of finger sandwiches.
That does appeal to me.
Yeah,
Actually.
yes, 15 is a lot.
I don't think I can think of 15 different types of sandwiches.
I'd like to. Please send me, if you know 15 kinds of finger sandwich, please. The email is didntreaditpod@gmail.com.
Yeah.
We are big sandwich aficionados here.
A finger
on the show.
sandwich in the summertime is great.
Egg and olive. That's one of the sandwiches we find out.
I don't know about that. Anyway, go on. Next.
So the whole idea, you know, so we've got all of these children rattling around. Mrs. Sheridan is a sweet but slightly airheaded woman who is surrounded by significantly more competent staff who are
Yes.
picking
as they
up her
usually
slack. The cream puffs have been delivered by the bakery. The local bakery is famous for their cream puffs, so nobody bothers nobody bothers having their cook make them.
Right.
Make them at home.
Right.
The cook slips one each to Laura and Joe's.
Nice.
Yeah. And it says, "Oh, impossible. Fancy cream puffs so soon after breakfast. The very idea made one shudder." All the same, 2 minutes later, Joe's and Laura were licking their fingers with that absorbed inward look that only comes from whipped cream.
I just remembered the garden party in Parasite. I just had a flash to Parasite. Okay, don't want to spoil it. Never mind.
And Laura suggests that they sneak back out to the garden she says, "I want to see how the men are getting on with the Marquis. They're such awfully nice men."
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. But they find they're trying to sneak out the back door, and the door is blocked because the cook, Sadie, who appears to be kind of their housekeeper, maid of all sorts, she's just
Does everything.
yeah. The delivery man and Hans, who I do not remember right now where Hans came from.
It's just a guy.
Possibly the flower guy.
Okay.
But all four of these sort of service people
Mm-hmm.
are standing immediately in front of the door, and they're all talking to each other because the delivery man is telling them all a bit of news.
Ooh.
And Laura emerges and is like, "What's going on?" And the delivery man, who it's noted is getting like a little sick thrill out of being the one who gets to be the bearer of bad news.
Oh, okay.
It says, "Know those little cottages just below here, miss?" Know them? Of course she knew them. "Well, there's a young chap living there, name of Scott, a carter. His horse shied at a traction engine, corner of Hawk Street, this morning, and he was thrown out on the back of his head. Killed." "Dead?" Laura stared at... This is the delivery guy they just keep calling Godber's man. Laura stared at Godber's man. "Dead when they picked him up," said Godber's man with relish. "They were taking the body home as I come up here." And he said to the cook, "He's left a wife and 5 little ones."
Oh, man.
Yeah. And Laura's first instinct, she grabs her sister by the sleeve and drags her away and sort of looks at her in like total horror and says, "Joes, however are we going to stop everything?"
Like, stop the garden party?
And her sister's like, "What the f are you talking about?"
Sister's like, ew.
And Laura's like, "Well, stop the garden party, of course." Her sister continues to be baffled. Laura says, "But we can't possibly have a garden party with a man dead just outside the front gate." But her sister calls her extravagant.
Extravagant.
For
Interesting choice of words.
yes. And the narration says, "That really was extravagant, for the little cottages were in a lane to themselves, at the very bottom of a steep rise that led up to the house. A broad road ran between. True, they were far too near. They were the greatest possible eyesore, and they had no right to be in that neighborhood at all. They were mean little dwellings, painted a chocolate brown. In the garden patches there was nothing but cabbage stalks, sick hens, and tomato cans. The very smoke coming out of their chimneys was poverty-stricken.
Ah, yes. Yeah.
Little rags and shreds of smoke, so unlike the great silvery plumes that uncurled from the Sheridans' chimneys.
Yeah. Rich smoke.
Washerwomen lived in the lane,
Ew.
and sweeps, and a cobbler, and a man whose house front was studded all over with minute bird cages. Children swarmed. When the Sheridans were little, they were forbidden to set foot there because of the revolting language and of what they might catch. But since they were grown up, Laura and Laurie, that's her brother,
That's confusing.
on their prowls, sometimes walked through. It was disgusting and sordid. They came out with a shudder. But still, one must go everywhere. One must see everything. So through they went. "And just think of what the band would sound like to that poor woman," said Laura.
Well, yeah.
Yeah? And her sister's response is, "If you're going to stop a band playing every time someone has an accident, you'll lead a very strenuous life."
Well, that's also true. Both can be true,
Yes.
I suppose.
And her sister very tellingly says, "You won't bring a drunken workman back to life by being sentimental." And
Who said he was drunk?
that is what Laura says verbatim. She's like, "Who said he was drunk? Where did that come from?"
Also, even if he was drunk, he didn't deserve to die.
Correct.
Okay.
But that's a very like
Never. I'm getting too far.
No. I mean,
Okay.
that was perfect because that's exactly what Laura says.
Yeah.
But you can see that kind of upper class, like the immediate slipping in of like, it's probably his own fault.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It doesn't say how old all of these children are, like in relation to each other.
Mm-hmm.
But it feels as if Laura is perhaps the youngest.
Yeah, it does feel that way.
Laura's baffled. Well, she's not even baffled. She's irritated. She doesn't understand why her sister doesn't understand.
Yeah.
And so she goes to her mother. In fact, she does the childish thing where she's like, "I'm going to tell Mom." And her sister's like, "Okay."
Where do you think I learned it from?
She goes to her mother and she says, "Mother, a man's been killed." And her mother's response is, "Not in the garden."
I was like, be more specific.
And when Laura's like, "No, not in our garden," her mother's like, "Oh, you scared me."
Okay.
And Laura tries, same thing. She's like, "We can't possibly have a garden party.
Mm-hmm.
These people are basically our neighbors."
Yeah.
And her mother's response is, "Use your common sense. It's only by accident we've heard of it. If someone had died there normally, and I can't understand how they keep alive in those pokey little holes,
Whoa.
we should still be having our party, shouldn't we?"
What do you mean normally?
Like, it's they don't usually find out when someone dies.
Oh.
Like, there's no reason for us to know when one of the pores just drops dead.
Yeah.
We only know about it because it happened dramatically.
Yeah.
In front of people.
Yeah.
In public.
Ugh. Inconsiderate.
Their children probably die constantly and while we're having garden parties, and like,
Probably.
it's never stopped us before.
Yeah.
What's your problem, Laura?
Why are you being weird, Laura?
And you can tell this woman has had several children. She might be kind of a monster, but she clearly understands some things about parenting, because when Laura starts to be like, "I don't know about this," her mom's like, "Look at this hat."
I got you a hat for the party.
Yeah, like basically she puts, I think it is a new hat that Mrs. Sheridan has bought for herself.
Oh.
And in a stroke of genius, she's like, "Oh my, Laura, it looks so much better on you. You should wear it for the garden party."
Oh my God. Are you sure? Me?
You look so grown up.
Me?
And Laura looks at herself in the mirror and she's
I
like,
do.
"Yes, exactly." It says, the first thing she saw was this charming girl in the mirror, in her black hat trimmed with gold daisies and a long black velvet ribbon. Never had she imagined she could look like that.
Oh.
Is mother right, she thought? And now she hoped her mother was right. Am I being extravagant? Perhaps it was extravagant. Just for a moment, she had another glimpse of that poor woman and those little children and the body being carried into the house. But it all seemed blurred, unreal, like a picture in the newspaper. "I'll remember it again after the party's over," she decided. And somehow, that seemed quite the best plan.
Yeah. You can't remember that when you've got this bitchin' hat on.
A bitchin' hat cures all ills.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Take the hat off, then you can remember it. I'm loving this word choice, extravagant.
Yeah.
Like, moral extravagance.
Yes.
Like your empathy is extravagant.
Having morals is extravagant.
Yeah.
Yes. At least in affluent colonial New Zealand it is.
You're really going overboard with that.
You need to calm the down, Laura.
Mm-hmm.
So she's been successfully bribed with her hat.
Mm-hmm.
She almost checks in with her brother because she has this sort of intuition that even if no one else agrees with her, maybe Lori
Okay.
will understand.
Yeah.
But she very consciously almost and then doesn't.
Oh.
She pulls back.
Does it say why?
It does. So, her instinct is basically like, if Lori agrees with them all, then he's right. But he might agree with me.
Mm.
And then he tells her how good she looks in her new hat.
Ah. Distraction.
Yes. And
Yes.
she's like, "Don't I?"
It's like, oh my God, thank you. You see it too.
And then the garden party happens.
Yeah.
And it's a huge success.
Huzzah.
And everyone says that Laura just looks incredible.
that hat.
That hat.
Yeah.
Someone says she looks quite Spanish. I don't know what that means.
Olé. Gracias.
And Laura's running around doing baby hostess things. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And it notes that she runs to her father at one point and begs him, and I don't know why she has to beg him, if the band can have something to drink. Don't know why your teenage daughter needs to beg you to give the band some refreshments.
Sounds like more extravagance to me.
In a New Zealand summer, which I'm assuming can get pretty toasty.
Yeah, but that's not their problem, is it?
Apparently not. Well,
No.
Laura makes it her problem.
This child.
And finally it says, and the perfect afternoon slowly ripened, slowly faded, slowly its petals closed. And everyone says, it's never been a more delightful garden party. And all the guests filter out. And Mrs. Sheridan does the thing that all hostesses have done since the dawn of time, where she throws an objectively incredible party and goes, thank goodness that's over.
Yeah.
And she says, I'm exhausted. Yes, it's been very successful. But oh, these parties. Why will you children insist on giving parties?
All right.
Laying it on a little thick there, Mrs. Sheridan.
All right, Mom.
And they all sit together in the now empty marquee, and they're sort of picking at what's left of all of the food.
The 38 finger sandwich varieties.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. The children are pressing sandwiches on their father. You get the impression that they're very excited to have a little FaceTime with Mr. Sheridan.
Aw.
Sad. And he, Mr. Sheridan, after having several sandwiches pressed upon him by his children, he says, I suppose you didn't hear of a beastly accident that happened today. And Mrs. Sheridan says, my dear, we did. It nearly ruined the party. Laura insisted we should put it off.
Boo, boo, Laura.
And Laura's like, don't tease me about it. And Mr. Sheridan goes on, it was a horrible affair all the same. Chap was married, too. Lived just below in the lane. Leaves a wife and half a dozen kiddies, so they say. And it says, an awkward little silence fell. Mrs. Sheridan fidgeted with her cup. Really, it was very tactless of father. Suddenly, she looked up. There on the table were all those sandwiches, cakes, puffs, all uneaten, all going to be wasted. She had one of her brilliant ideas.
Is this the mom or Laura?
This is the mom.
The mom.
We've switched into, we're
Right.
focalizing through her now.
Right.
And she says, I know. Let's make up a basket. Let's send that poor creature some of this perfectly good food. At any rate, it will be the greatest treat for the children. Don't you agree? And she's sure to have neighbors calling in and so on. What a point to have it all ready prepared.
Yeah.
So she sends
Okay.
Laura off for the big basket from the cupboard under the stairs.
Uh-huh.
And Laura is like, is that what we should do? Is this woman going to want our party table scraps?
Yeah.
Is that how this should go?
Is that showing a sign of respect?
And her mother goes, what's the matter with you today? An hour or two ago, you were insisting on being sympathetic.
Yeah. I don't know.
So they sweep a bunch of food into the basket. Her mother tries to send her with some of the lilies as well, because people of that class are so impressed by lilies.
Yeah.
But one of her
Their
sisters...
little brains don't know what to make of them.
Totally.
What is that? It's amazing. You said there's a flower?
But one of her sisters points out that if she carries a bunch of lilies, apparently the stems will ruin Laura's lace dress. So no lilies, just food.
Mm.
And Laura's shipped off to
Deliver the basket?
go deliver the basket.
Okay.
And it's growing dark. It's dusk. It says, how quiet it seemed after the afternoon. Here she was going down the hill to somewhere where a man lay dead, and she couldn't realize it. Why couldn't she? She stopped a minute, and it seemed to her that kisses, voices, tinkling spoons, laughter, the smell of crushed grass were somehow inside her. She had no room for anything else. How strange. She looked up at the pale sky, and all she thought was, yes, it was the most successful party.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But she's crossed the road, and now she's on the lane, and we're getting into
The squalor.
Yes, thank you.
The filth.
Women in shawls and men's tweed caps hurried by. You know it's bad when women are wearing men's hats. It's terrifying.
Yes.
Men hung over the palings. The children played in doorways. A low hum came from the mean little cottages. In some of them, there was a flicker of light, and a shadow, crab-like, moved across the window.
There's crabs in there. They're morphing.
And Laura is becoming increasingly self-conscious about the fact that she is still wearing this giant hat.
Oh, she still has the hat on.
She did not change her outfit. She is wearing a party dress and an ostentatious hat.
Good.
Without a coat on.
Good.
Just
Yes.
And she's like, people are probably looking at me funny. But it's too late to turn back because she's at the house.
Mm-hmm.
A dark knot of people stood outside. Beside the gate, an old woman with a crutch sat in a chair, watching. She had her feet on a newspaper. The voices stopped as Laura drew near. The group parted. It was as though she was expected, as though they had known she was coming here. And she asks if this is, Mrs. Scott's house. And they say, it is. And she walks down the path. And it says that she actually says out loud, "Help me, God," as she walks up the pathway to the door and knocks. And a woman opens the door. And Laura's like, "Are you Mrs. Scott?" And she's like, "No, but come in." And Laura is trying to kind of fumble through, like, I wasn't planning on coming. My mother sent me with this basket.
I have our old sandwiches.
And the woman just says, "Step this way, please."
Mm-hmm.
She found herself in a wretched little low kitchen, lighted by a smoky lamp. There was a woman sitting before the fire. And the woman who lit her in is like, "There's a young woman to see you."
There's a young woman dressed as a peacock.
Yes.
Here with a basket of old food.
And the woman who lit her in explains that she is the bereaved woman's sister. And sort of says, like, you'll have to forgive her. She's not really chatty right now.
Yeah.
And Laura says, don't disturb her. I just wanted to leave this basket. And it says, but at that moment, the woman at the fire turned round. Her face, puffed up, red, with swollen eyes and swollen lips, looked terrible. She seemed as though she couldn't understand why Laura was there. What did it mean? Why was this stranger standing in the kitchen with a basket? What was it all about? And the poor face puckered up again. At that, the sister is just like, "Oh, yep, you know what? I'm just gonna..."
Well, thanks for coming. It's been great.
"I'll take care of it."
Yeah.
But as Laura is like, "Oh, thank God, get me out of here," the sister's like, "Oh, I'm assuming that you..." The sister does not seem to grasp that Laura has no place being here.
Okay.
And so she's like, "Oh, you must want to see him too before you go."
Oh my.
Which used to be a lot more standard.
Sure.
We don't go say goodbye to corpses the way that we used to.
That's true.
And so the sister is clearly assuming that Laura has some kind of a connection.
Yeah.
And that the poor Mrs. Scott is just too out of it to explain.
Yeah.
And that Laura isn't just a complete rando who's barged into the house with a basket of food for no reason.
Yeah. She's like, "Well, you came to see the body. Here's the body."
And her sister, M's sister says, "You'd like a look at him, wouldn't you? Don't be afraid, my lass. He looks a picture. There's nothing to show. Come along." And they step into the room, and it says, "There lay a young man, fast asleep, sleeping so soundly, so deeply, that he was far, far away from them both. Oh, so remote, so peaceful. He was dreaming. Never wake him up again. His head was sunk in the pillow. His eyes were closed. They were blind under the closed eyelids. He was given up to his dream. What did garden parties and baskets and lace frocks matter to him? He was far from all those things. He was wonderful, beautiful. While they were laughing and while the band was playing, this marvel had come to the lane. All is well, said that sleeping face. This is just as it should be. I am content. But all the same, you had to cry, and she couldn't go out of the room without saying something to him. Laura gave a loud, childish sob. "Forgive my hat," she said. And she runs out of the house and runs straight into her brother Laurie.
Oh.
On the stoop, because their mother was getting anxious. And he says, "Was it all right?" And she says, "Yes, quite." "Oh, Laurie." She took his arm. She pressed up against him. "I say, you're not crying, are you?" asked her brother. Laura shook her head. She was. Laurie put his arm around her shoulder. "Don't cry," he said in his warm, loving voice. "Was it awful?" "No," sobbed Laura. "It was simply marvelous. But Laurie..." She stopped. She looked at her brother. "Isn't life," she stammered, "isn't life..." But what life was, she couldn't explain. No matter. He quite understood. "Isn't it, darling?" said Laurie. The end. Yeah. What do you make of that ending?
I had been thinking that Laurie was like the same age as her, but that made him seem, I don't know, feels like maybe he's older, or he doesn't have to be older to patronize her. It felt like he was patronizing her.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I don't know.
That's an odd one.
Yeah.
To me, the first 3/4 of the story feels like it has a certain class consciousness that then kind of comes apart at the seams in the closing.
Do you mean it as in like the author loses it when she paints death as like a great equalizer?
I am not quite sure what to make of what happens when we get to the cottage. I'm not, if I'm totally honest, because I think there's a level of sort of romanticization of this dead laborer that when combined with the deeply unflattering portrait of like his wife and his sister-in-law and all of the people around the cottage feels very how lucky it is for Laura that this man has died so that she can have a coming-of-age experience.
Yeah, thank you for my character development.
And understand the transcendental nature of death.
But it does parallel the romanticization, it's a weird word, of the tent laborers in the beginning.
It does.
But that seemed self-aware.
I think it was to an extent. It is also important to note, I think, that much like literally all Western literature written in the wake of World War I, it's influenced by being written in the wake of World War I.
True.
Mansfield lost a brother in the war. And that combined with the fact that she wrote this in sort of the lead up to her own premature death, I think we are meant to lean much more heavily on the transcendental beauty that all things must die.
Yeah. I remember learning that about like the rise of spiritualism after World War I, with so many people wanting to, or just like totally at loose ends and wanting to reach out to like their dead, children or husbands or whoever. And this just doesn't like remind me of that, but I guess it does like add context to just the time period and what was on people's minds. I don't know. I guess her romanticizing these young men, even her brother to a certain extent.
Yeah.
I guess that fits with the theme of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I don't mean to sell Mansfield short. I think the intention of this story is that we are meant to understand that Laura, like Mansfield herself, is destined to supersede her origins, right? Like she is going to she already has more depth and more inherent morality and a better understanding of like what life is really about than these very unserious people she is
Yeah.
related to,
Yeah.
and the kind of people who are coming to these garden parties, and that this is a coming of age narrative where she is learning like how the world works, and that she will become a better, more nuanced person who escapes to London and writes short stories.
Good for her. And all these other people are just, all these poor people are just props for her development.
Well, I mean, that's what a coming of age story is.
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
how they work.
Yeah. If I had a better memory, I could think of other instances of this, of which there are many.
Oh, so many.
But
And
I don't.
Well, and I think also a thing that I have to be careful of making this podcast, and also in a general sense, is that we are in such a weird place right now culturally where, in my opinion, everything is coming of age narratives. It's like we've forgotten how to tell almost any other story. And I think it has to do with the sort of overall emotionally stunted place that our media landscape is in.
Yeah.
But it just feels like everything is coming of age stories. And especially in the literary fiction market, it feels like we have been inundated with thinly veiled, belated coming of age stories about sad white women.
Yeah.
And it's made me a little intolerant of the whole framework.
That's understandable.
Which is not Katherine Mansfield's fault.
Yeah.
She has been dead for like 100 years.
Well, why did she start the genre then?
There is objectively nothing wrong with telling a story about Laura and Laura's emotional development. That is the world that Mansfield knew, and the world Mansfield is writing about. And Mansfield has the perspective that she has.
It is interesting because if you think about perhaps her intentions with the story, and this is a big assumption because I am not her and I have never met her and I never will. You would assume maybe that her intentions for the story are just to talk about how like this one young person was introduced to more of the realities of the world through a very specific avenue, like that is a result of her, kind of place and time and her status within society. And Mansfield speaks with truth about this because, it mirrors her own experience. And that is a valuable perspective, and one that I suppose comes to us all in the course of growing up. But with distance, like looking back on this now as readers with distance, we bring a whole new interpretation to it, which is that like you're in a bubble.
Yeah.
Like
and she knows she's in a bubble. Like Mansfield is writing about it because she knows it's a bubble. And I think one of the things that's really interesting about this story and about Mansfield in general is some of the things I was reading about it were talking about the sort of like colonial, like one of the things that Mansfield wound up kind of resenting New Zealand for, and when I say New Zealand, I mean specifically like the strata of colonial New Zealand society that she was living in, was that she felt it was a place, it was without a culture, essentially, that it was this like shallow, empty.
I think that happens with a lot of colonies.
Well, that's what yes.
See, for example,
yes,
United States.
Well, that's the thing, right?
Yeah.
And so it's one of the things that they were kind of writing about is this sort of inherent absence at the heart of all colonial projects.
That's so true.
Because at least, and it's interesting that she loved London so much when they are, of course, the power behind the colonial project of New Zealand.
Yes.
But the thing about being in England, right, for her at the time at least, is she felt, the English themselves have a history, a culture. There is an undeniable Englishness to the country of England that has been full of,
But in a colony, like your culture is set up, basically all it is opposition to.
Yeah.
It is the opposite of what the actual culture of the place is. And
Well,
so
and
it becomes a culture of absence.
And more to the point, it's parasitically aping the culture of whoever set the colony up. It isn't like they are attempting to capture Englishness with nothing underpinning it.
We're like, we're going to take that and put it here, and it's going to make sense, and there's not going to be any friction or problems therein.
Yeah, it's a paper mask without a face underneath.
Yeah.
sitting in a puddle of blood.
Big old puddle.
And one of the reasons I think I chose the story is that the first time I read it, I did not know that it was set in New Zealand, actually.
Oh, interesting.
I got to the bit about the trees and was like,
what kind of tree is that?
I thought we were in England. But it felt very American to me.
Oh, yeah.
And not very English.
Well, it's in New Zealand.
Well, sure. Right. But I didn't know that. But what jumped out at me once I figured out where it was actually set was that if it were an English story, you would have been more likely to have like a bit of a sort of noblesse oblige. Like, we owe these workers our condescension.
Yeah.
And it's a much more colonial and therefore American attitude to be like, they're their own problem.
Yeah. Very like, we worry about our own shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to be clear, I don't think it would have been like, oh, we have to cancel the party, but it would have been like, I don't know, send them $50 or something. What? Who died?
Yeah.
What's he worth? 10 pounds?
Give him 10 pounds, whatever.
Send the cook down there with some sandwiches and tuppence.
Tuppence. How much is tuppence?
2 pence.
2 pence. How much
1
is a
penny
pence?
per child.
A pence is a penny. Okay. Do not understand the British.
Send the cook with a meat pie and 6 pence. That's 1 pence per child. What more could they ask for?
Nothing. That's great. That's enough. Thank you.
It is very American to be like, what was he drunk? It's his own problem.
Yeah. We got our own thing going on here. We're doing a garden party.
They can have some party leftovers afterwards if they're lucky.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm curious what Mansfield thought went on for Laura after this as she got older.
I think Mansfield
Who
thought
knows?
Laura turned into Mansfield.
Well, yes.
Yes. I think a lot of these stories, she apparently did a slew of stories set sort of in her childhood toward the end of her life as she was kind of parsing through the person that she became. And
That makes sense.
yeah. And, like she, I'm sure, had some kind of complicated feelings about the fact that she contracted TB, while abroad, which ultimately is what killed her, and that she might not have caught TB if she had stayed safely at home like a good girl.
Well, that's what you get.
Which I'm not saying, there's no moral weight there, but I'm sure it crossed her mind at some point.
Yeah.
Because I think it would cross anyone's mind at some point.
Yeah.
Just like, well...
The regret.
Well, but not necessarily regret. I mean, I think a lot of what she was writing about at the end of her life was about this, death is what makes life precious. And you have to, it's better to have searing experiences than to be trapped forever in a sterile, conflictless garden party.
True.
And I think she rather would have had her many, many love affairs and
that's right.
and her adventures abroad, and had a tragically shortened life probably than spent several more decades as Mrs. Sheridan.
Throwing garden parties.
Throwing garden parties.
Ordering lilies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Forgetting where the sandwich flags are.
Oh my God. What a faux pas.
Yeah. Bribing her children with hats so that they don't preemptively discover morality.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's expensive bribery. The millinery budget. Is that how you say that word?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah.
Now, what article of clothing would get you to forget that you had a conscience in order for a party to go forward?
It changes. I don't know. It probably depends on the season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think for my part, it would need to be a pretty big ticket item. I would need like some really quality outerwear or like a well-tailored suit.
Really cool coat.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't need fancy hats.
No.
No.
But like well-made, because that's the important part,
Right now, just like a decent pair of coveralls might get me.
Sure. Yeah.
Pockets.
Yep.
Yeah.
Workwear.
I don't know. I'm pretty... sadly, I think I'm kind of bribable.
Well, let's be honest. We're both pretty bribable because neither of us are at the garden party. We are putting up the tents.
Yeah. But what nice young men we are.
We are such nice young
doing
men.
it. Yeah.
We know exactly where the marquee needs to go so that it hits you right slap bang in the eye.
I'm just thinking back to the details of the story, and it's just, I don't know. I don't know enough to be like, just like, why did she choose that? Why did the author like make those choices? And I can't answer that question, but
you can ask it.
I can ask it. Why, Grace, why?
Well, which ones?
I don't know.
What's jumping out at you?
I mean, the focus on like the marquee, like where the tent goes and like the guys doing it and the different places around the yard.
Well, because this is Laura trying on her mother's responsibilities.
Ah, right.
Right, for the first time.
Yeah.
And finding that they fit her. Maybe they don't quite fit as well or as seamlessly as one would hope if you were trying to make a little Mrs. Sheridan in Waiting.
Yeah. But she's concerned with the beauty of the world, and she doesn't want to cover up the Caracas trees.
Yeah. And she's also too friendly with the workmen. You remember she tries...
Oh, right.
She tries saying good morning to them in her mother's voice, and it doesn't
fit.
It doesn't fit.
Yeah.
She's seeing them as people, which is absolutely off the table. And it's, it's easy to laugh at the narration being like, why couldn't she be friends with workmen? But it's also important to remember that it would be taken for granted that she wouldn't be friends with workmen.
Yeah.
By reader and author alike.
Yeah, I wonder like how this story would be received at the time. Would people be like, oh my God?
I did not have the chance to go digging. I think it was fairly successful. It wound up, this was the title story for one of her short story collections.
Okay.
It was originally released in, I think in Scribner's magazine in 3 installments.
Is it that long?
No.
Oh.
It's really not actually, but yeah.
There's only, pages cost money.
Must have been short installments.
Yeah.
Or it was longer and maybe they edited it down. I don't know.
True. Maybe
Maybe the version I have has been abbreviated.
Yeah.
The version I have is from a very silly little short story collection called Garden Stories by Everyman's Pocket Classics, which I regret to say I do not recommend.
Burn.
It's
a cute cover.
It's a cute cover.
That's about it.
Thought it was going to be... I really like themed short story collections, both in a general sense and because it is helpful for making this podcast.
Yeah.
But several of these things are not actually short stories. They are excerpts.
Oh, that's cheating.
And and that is very annoying to me, actually.
Well, it could have had the short story with the werewolf.
It could have.
Huh?
It should have.
Huh?
I would have liked that. That would have been fun.
Duh. They don't listen to this podcast.
No, they don't. They don't care.
Maybe they should.
They just want to sell their gift books
Yeah.
that won't get read.
I'm tired of gift books.
The next person who gives me a novelty book, I'm giving it right back. For the first time in my life, I would just be like, oh, no, thank you.
No, thank you so much. No, thank you.
Put a moratorium on novelty books.
Yeah.
Never again. I have too many books as it is.
They were real big in like late 2000s, early 2010s.
Yeah. You remember when all of the bloggers got book deals?
Yeah, unfortunately. It was a scourge.
And then the internet media ecosystem collapsed?
Yeah.
When Facebook lied to everyone about pivoting to video?
Oh, don't get me started. Zuckerberg.
Yeah.
The Garden Party.
The Garden Party.
The Garden Party is an interesting story.
Closing thoughts.
I feel like I'm gonna think about it for a little bit longer.
Yeah.
It's
for all its ambiguity, because of its ambiguity, this is a story that stuck with me. We are covering it in part because I first read it months ago, and then it like leapt unbidden into my mind, and I was like, oh yeah, let's do that weird garden party story.
Yeah.
It's uncomfortable, and maybe I'm mildly dismissive of it because it makes me it gives me secondhand embarrassment as a white woman who grew up in a reasonably sheltered suburban environment.
Oh yeah.
Have
you ever delivered a basket in a hat?
No.
To a lady who's crying and looks like shit?
No, that hasn't happened to me.
I love how she was like, man, she looks awful.
She's like, ew.
Gross. Your dead husband, though, he's looking pretty fine.
He's looking very at peace.
Looking angelic.
Yep.
You need to fix your face.
Get it together.
Yeah, lady.
It's
interesting.
Yeah. And again, like, I understand the point of contrasting the environment that Laura has just come from with the raw reality of this grieving widow. It just is kind of funny.
It is a little funny.
It's a little funny.
Yeah. I guess that's how a teenager would.
Yes. She's like,
Teenagers,
whoa.
Because teenagers are usually themselves, I've been thinking about this a lot lately, are usually themselves so self-critical that makes you much more critical of others.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
Where you're like, well, I'm worried that I look like shit. So you look like shit. I don't want to look like you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And teenagers are usually instinctively very uncomfortable with, you know, really powerful displays of emotion by adults.
Yes, true.
They find that very discomforting.
Yeah.
Understandably, because teenagers in their minds have the monopoly on big displays of emotion.
Yeah, it's cool when they do it.
They really need the adults in their lives to cool it so that they can figure out how to have their own big displays of emotion without having to worry about adults having big displays of emotion.
Yeah.
Teenagers do not have the emotional bandwidth for the adults in their lives to be three-dimensional people.
No.
That doesn't happen until you're at least 23.
Yeah. Very inconvenient and confusing.
It's quite frankly exhausting.
Yeah.
As a person who is currently grappling with pretty severe burnout, I have caught myself lately slipping into a very teenager state of mind where I'm just like, I don't have the time for the people around me to have problems.
Yeah.
Like, I'm tired.
Yeah.
I'm barely keeping it together.
Yeah. I've been thinking about adolescence a lot lately.
Me too.
And, like teenagerhood a lot.
Yeah, some things never change. You could change some details about this story and set it in 2025
Parasite.
in like a suburb of Dallas.
Yeah.
And it would work.
Yeah.
Yep.
You could do a Richmond rewrite.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Where the rich people have water. And they bring leftover plastic gallon jugs of water to the poor people down the road. Poor people are like, thanks.
Which neighborhood in Richmond would you set this in? It'd have to be one of like
Probably near West End.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of like those really like out like by Agecroft.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking like quite River Road because that's like rich, but like
Good.
Good.
All right.
Yes.
we should stop.
I can keep chatting. You want to keep going?
Nope. I think we should wrap it up.
You don't want to just chit chat a little bit
Do you want to give me a closing thought
about what?
about the story? Play me off, Sam. I'm flailing here.
There were verbs, there were nouns, adjectives, and adverbs, connecting words.
Adolescence, so that I can cut everything that was in between this if we need to.
Wait a minute. That's not what I signed up for.
You've been thinking.
I want my thoughts to be broadcast.
I don't actually remember what we said between now and then.
Look, I just talk. Adolescence is a confusing time, and you know what? The bubble that Laura seems to be in, that Mansfield is aware of, that mirrors the bubble that anyone is in as a teenager.
Yeah,
you are kind of the center of the universe, and everything is happening to you, and you're just that's when you're just learning that you're not the center of the universe.
Yeah,
it's a real time of like reckoning.
Yeah, and Mansfield has a lot of faith in us, the reader.
Big mistake.
And our ability to see beyond the focalization of Laura to the bigger picture.
Yeah.
And I think that is another thing, especially lately, and maybe this is part of the burnout exhaustion, but I have had to remind myself sometimes that I am getting a little bit too used to the more contemporary habit of literature and cinema just telling you what the moral is, like what to think.
Yeah.
Just being like, like
we expect that now.
The 2025 version of this story, Laura would give a speech
yeah.
at the end.
Yeah.
To probably her mother. She would storm back up to the house
They're
and
like,
be
"Listen
like,
up, Mom."
and be like, you listened to music and danced while this man lay dying.
Yeah.
And then she would burn her own house down
Yeah.
to teach them all a lesson.
People would be like, good movie.
And they would clap.
Yeah.
Yeah. The villagers would come out of their hovels to clap as she burned the house
Be like,
down.
thank you.
And they would say, this was the morally correct thing to do. You are a good person. And you, the reader, are a good person for having consumed this story.
You are not canceled yet.
Yeah.
I mean, you talk a lot about how we have a decreasing tolerance, ever decreasing tolerance for unlikable protagonists.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just I think maybe it's just kind of the current trend in our media.
I hope we get over. I hope we get better soon.
Yeah,
I
think we will.
don't think it's good for us
I think we'll.
to think and live and tell stories this way.
Yeah.
I hope that we learn to embrace ambiguity again.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that we learn how to tell a story that isn't a coming of age story.
Maybe a nice murder mystery.
Sure, yeah.
Good old whodunit.
You know, I hope we can figure these things out someday.
I'm trying to think of another type of story. That's all I know. What else is there?
Man versus self, man versus nature, man versus God.
Whoa. Slow down.
Procedural dramas.
Yes.
Situational comedies.
Workplace comedy.
Workplace comedies.
Yeah, that's about it, right?
Musicals.
That's about musicals. Yeah.
French crime musicals.
Now, when you say that, what do you mean?
Les Miserables.
Oh. Yeah. That's a big one. Yeah.
It was a classic.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Lee,
What?
this is usually where I ask people where they want to be found, but I know you don't. So,
Don't,
Lee.
look for me in the sky.
Okay. Thanks for being here.
The stars will tell you. When you see a sunset, that's me. Are you? Oh, I thought you were reaching to unplug something.
Just yank your mic. Thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You couldn't have done it without me.
I couldn't have.
Yeah.
It would have been hard. It would have been significantly less interesting if I had sat here talking to myself.
Well,
Yeah.
as the host of this podcast, I'm glad that I could give that to you.
Thank you.
Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening.
Yep.
This is another week of Didn't Read It.
Joke's on you. You're in charge now.
It's just going to be a lot of yapping.
Well, thank all of you for being here with us as we did our yapping. We really appreciate it. If you want to do us any favors, consider telling a friend or loved one or frenemy about the show.
Yeah.
Consider maybe buying a piece of merch so that we can keep making the show.
Look at this hat that I'm wearing right now. You
It's
want to tell them about it, Grace?
It's a great hat. It's a black beanie that says "Didn't Read It."
Yes.
It looks real good.
It does look good. I look cool, and everyone thinks I'm cool when I wear it.
These things are accurate. Lee is deeply cool.
Yeah.
And looks really
Sorry
cool
about it.
in their Didn't Read It merch.
Yeah. Cool as
Yeah, so cool.
Mm-hmm.
And consider getting like a cute tank top.
Mm-hmm.
It's summer now.
Yeah.
Sun's out, guns out.
Garden parties.
Let it fly.
Yeah.
Wear a cropped Didn't Read It shirt to a garden party.
Mm-hmm.
You'll make lots of friends.
You sure will. They'll be like, where's that shirt from?
And you can be like, I listened to this podcast.
You'll be like, go put up the tent over there.
about a great short story called The Garden Party. Let me tell you about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of these things and more help me to keep making the show.
Which we love so much.
Which we love so much. And that's it. We will be back in 2 weeks.
2 semanas.
Yes,
Sí.
exactly. See.
Sí.
And until then, if you
God.
can,
Oh, sorry.
if you can, this week, this month, this pay period, consider supporting a living author because they could really, really use the love.
Mm-hmm.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Didn't Read It was created, written, researched, and recorded by me, Grace Todd. Maddie Wood is our co-producer and social media maven. Our theme song is Books 2.0, written, performed, and recorded by William Albritton. Our logo was designed and illustrated by the incredibly talented Jess Versus. Reach out to us with questions, concerns, or academic scrutiny at didntreaditpod@gmail.com.